in the discipline of the path, having taken refuge, then the path is based on discipline and accepting the one or another level of discipline, of vows, and such as the vows of the what are called the pratimoksha, what's personal individual liberation or personal liberation. Moksha means liberation. Prati means personal. And then such as the vow not to kill, not to steal, not to practice sexual abuse or abusive sexual or sexual misconduct, and then a lying, divisive, slanderous speech, abusive speech, and useless speech, or specifically gossip. It's not actually useless, it's actually very useful for arousing the negative states of mind. And then so in the discipline of the Vinaya, those different rules of conduct are elaborated on in order to know how to uphold that pure conduct. In the Mahayana, the Bodhisattva Yana, then this the vow of the Bodhichitta, the commitment of the Bodhichitta, because it's much more to do with the mind. The pratimoksha vows have to do with speech and behavior, physical behavior with your body. And the bodhicitta, it's about the mind, the bodhicitta, whether it's there, whether it's not there, whether it's being degraded, whether it's flourishing, and so forth. It's all about the mental practice of bodhicitta. The verbal and physical conduct are a support for the path of the bodhicitta. So I'm saying this so that even just reciting this like this with a good heart and a good intention, then taking these bodhisattva vow in this manner is a wonderful thing to do, and will change the course of your mind stream's history in beginningless samsara, and eventually definitely lead to a state of liberation. I only say that based on what I've read by in the sutras. So these first 3 chapters that we just read are the method to give rise to bodhicitta. Again, the first chapter, we should recite and study that and contemplate that, all the verses of the first chapter, so that we have a heartfelt longing for bodhicitta, and more beneficially, how do I say, that we will connect bodhicitta with like the more we have access, the more we can remember, be mindful of these verses of the first chapter. Then when situations arise in our life, on the street, in our everyday life, then we will have much more, we'll have much, how do I say, much, the teachings of the Bodhicitta, our yearning and our connection with Bodhicitta will be accessible. It'll be sort of, these verses will become kind of our subconscious gossip, our subconscious conversation that we have, so that when a situation arises, it'll spring forward. We'll be able to access it. Just like like on a computer, like a window that's already open. You know, that all you have to do is just, shoot your thing up in the corner and they all pop up and you know exactly which one to bring forward, rather than just scratching your head wondering what you need to do when you feel your kleshas storming or some circumstances arises that makes you unhappy, or some health issues or things. Everything we want, like bodhicitta, if it's a panacea, then we need to remember to take it. Get it out of the book. In other words, get it out of the book into our neurological system. Then it begins to affect and infect our heart. If we just learn a lot about bodhicitta and read all the books there are about mind training and bodhicitta, it's too much to know, too many things to know. That's why for my money, or for my time, what is my money, my time, just really just learning and contemplating and remembering, and this first chapter is so helpful. Then when this yearning and longing for bodhicitta will drive us to practicing things from the point of view of merit, gathering merit, because we're unable to generate bodhicitta because of the dimness, the cloudiness, the unwholesomeness, the draining habits of our mind, our tendencies. They all kind of draw us and drain away our ability to give rise to bodhicitta, and that's because of our merit. And so this second and third chapters are the direct methods, even just reading and contemplating and visualizing and practicing and using them as springboards for remembering. Even if every day you take a certain group of verses and make that a practice for the day, this is how we will generate merit, and merit will purify our mind stream, and it will enrich our mind stream in order that bodhicitta that we long for will actually have a ground, just like a seed that's scattered on a fertile and well-prepared soil. That's what we need to do by creating this longing on the one hand and this virtue, or this merit on the other hand, and then they will interdependently give rise to bodhicitta when it is not there. And now, having gone through that development or being introduced to how to give rise to bodhicitta, then Shantideva goes on to answering our understanding, which we should have, that bodhicitta can easily deteriorate. We might have even had it 5 minutes ago and it's gone. Something like, I mean, it's so easily, so fragile. And so we also need to contemplate that how easily it degenerates, disappears, or becomes distorted and corrupted by our games, our ego. And so the second section of the text has to do with how to prevent bodhicitta from declining once it has been developed, once it has arisen. And in the like this fourth chapter here, it's called carefulness. Pakya usually we think of as more like heedfulness, being heedful. Heedful has careful, you're careful, but then there's kind of a intentional, there's an energy. Not careful in the sense of like being, yeah, anyway, well, that's what's discussed in the fourth chapter is the fourth chapter and the fifth chapter the fourth chapter is called here, I'll have to use carefulness or heedfulness, and then the fifth chapter is introspection, I think. Vigilant introspection, okay, it's introspection. And also mindfulness. These are the three faculties that we are being instructed to develop in these two chapters. Heedfulness, mindfulness, and introspection. Heedfulness has to do, or carefulness has to do with paying attention to what we should avoid and what we should adopt. Paying attention to virtue, the presence of or the lack of, and non-virtue, the presence or the lack of. That's being careful about these things. Just to throw out these definitions. Mindfulness means remembering. Of course, part of being careful is we need to know. We need some knowledge of what to avoid and what to adopt. As it talks about in the commentary, he talks about how, there's many people who take vows, and they shave their head and wear the right clothes, and they look, and they have the feeling that they're vow holders, but they have no clue as to what those vows even are. So that's the fault of not seeking out and learning what it is that we're supposed to be adopting, what the precepts are. Like when we say we take the precepts step by step, I will abide and train. Okay, well, what are they? So that's here. Now, I have to say that typically, as I understand it, in the studies, in the studying of the general method of the path, first we get the Bodhichitta vow, and then we maintain it by learning all the different precepts and vows of the Bodhichitta, and then learn how to purify those vows when they are damaged or broken. Here, Shantideva isn't specifically going into all the details of the vows. He's teaching us here how to hold the vow, how to prevent bodhicitta from degenerating. He's teaching heedfulness, mindfulness, and introspection. So heedfulness is this kind of knowing, it's our carefulness and controlling ourselves vis-a-vis of virtue and non-virtue. And mindfulness is remembering how to behave. It's like a memory. It's called like the rope of mindfulness. It's like a rope that connects us with what we understand we should be doing. And then introspection is like a spy. Introspection is an awareness. It's like maintaining the continuity of an awareness of your body, speech, of the conduct of your body, speech, and the disposition of your mind. It's introspection, meaning that you have an awareness of how you're doing, like a spy. It's called it's like a spy. Let's see, there's so many aspects to this, because in the commentary, he does go into all the different vows, levels of vows and so forth. And so it's not that we shouldn't avoid knowing them, but what I think that for me here with y'all, it might just get to be too much. And so I would recommend that you, I'll just, well here, like in this first verse here of verse 4, I interrupted myself. I know, I'll get back to that last sentence that I didn't finish yet. The children of the conqueror who thus have firmly grasped this bodhicitta should never turn aside from it, strive never to transgress its disciplines. That's disciplines. And we should never turn aside from those disciplines through laziness, through procrastination, through actually there's three things that three ways that we should three reasons why we violate or we don't adhere to discipline. And one is that we don't know the training. Okay, so we need to remedy that. There's no there's no shortcut to being a pure vow holder, to protect bodhicitta, if you don't know the vows, as I mentioned. And then another way that we lose, or we have the other downfall, is heedlessness, being heedless, careless, being sloppy. That. And so that's why here this chapter is about heedfulness, because heedlessness and carelessness and being offhand those are sort of what are called the gates to downfall. The other gate to the downfall is that we have many kleshas. We haven't tamed our mind so that our kleshas become manageable. And so having many stormy kleshas all the time, then that's also a reason, that's a doorway to downfalls. Oh, and then there is a fourth one of these doorways, and that is not respecting the training. Just sort of assuming that, oh, now you're a bodhisattva, and that you're the pride and the confidence of having a bodhisattva vow will sort of carry you through without having to be scrupulous, without having to be heedful, without having to be careful, without having to be mindful, without having to be introspective. And that's particularly can be very threatening if we aren't practicing according to our capacity, or if we aren't practicing according to this step-by-step approach. And if we're mixing things up, we can be very, it can be a sign, it can be like not respecting the training can be thinking that because you read some more higher teaching on, say, emptiness or Mahamudra or great perfection, that you're going to just think that way. And that this is all this other stuff is all kind of below that and kind of dispensable. That obviously, or that is a wrong-headed approach to actually realizing those higher teachings. I mean, all the paths that the Buddha taught were to awaken to your own absolute nature, your own truth, your own mind's nature. And so I will practice step by step means, okay, now we've accepted and taken the vows of bodhicitta. Now, how do I keep them from declining? And so we need to know how they can decline, and that's through these four doorways: not knowing the training, being heedless, careless, and having many kleshas, and not respecting the training. The way it's bodhisattvas take this vow to attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, and they take it, and their intention is to continue training in bodhicitta for tens of thousands of lifetimes or more. So we need to also think both humbly, being humble, which is what this heedfulness, when we train in heedfulness and we train in carefulness and heedfulness, we can't help but become humble, because we just see how sloppy and careless we are. And so training and being heedful makes this humility, humbleness come. But also then this conviction that we will continue this for a long time. And that training has to do with studying the way that the truth is presented, and in our historical period, being a Buddhist, then I rely on the teachings of the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, for the truth, and try to fit into that mold. But it's the truth that he's presenting. And so bodhicitta is something that will blossom in one's lifetime, so that whatever future lifetime you have, that bodhicitta will take on a form that will be appropriate to that particular environment with those particular types of sentient beings, and you will be motivated to benefit there. And so here in this human life we have, with all of our freedoms and advantages, then we need to reflect on bodhicitta as being something that we aspire to and have an intention to maintain from now until all sentient beings are placed in a state of Buddhahood. So we need to pass over our habitual sort of short-term expectations. Right now, what we've been introduced to from Shantideva is this all these numbers, this threefold path. And if we just take this path as what we've been taught here is that bodhicitta, the path of bodhicitta, is made up of what? Where we've come from here. First, it's made up of training the mind, which began with this second chapter, training the mind in virtue, and particularly training the mind in this from the 11th verse of the 3rd chapter, where it talks about offering body, possessions, and merit and virtue. That's mind training. So really look into that part. So first is mind training, then embracing, fully embracing or training the mind to fully embrace the bodhicitta commitment, bodhicitta vow, and then rejoicing. You could say those are 3 practices. And you can, whether you're doing whatever kind of practice you're doing, Hinayana, Vajrayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana, those practices that you're doing should be able to be fit into these 3 practices. If we want to progress on the path, then the path, what constitutes the path is learning and acquiring knowledge, learning, studying, listening to teachings, and then making, by learning, then, or let's say studying the Dharma, then we resolve our doubts. And then by reflecting on what we learned, we gain certainty by contemplating or reflecting on what we've studied. We have to transition just knowing something and reflect on it in order to change our mind, to bring our mind further on the path. And then we need to, once we have gained certainty, then we need to practice it by meditating. The basis for that process, that approach of study, reflection, and meditation, the ground of that, the gravel or the road of that, where that operates on, is what's called discipline. The discipline is the ground of all good qualities on the path, is taught. And it's one of the paramitas. And if we want to, in the what's called the 3 higher trainings, where the Eightfold Noble Path is reduced, not reduced, what do you say, is essentialized to three trainings of wisdom. Of course, wisdom is the result of the Buddhist path. Buddhahood is attained through the revelation, the revealing of wisdom, our wisdom nature. Wisdom depends on meditation. And meditation depends on discipline. If our mind is disciplined, then it becomes clear, wakeful, flexible, open, what's called not fearless, kind of fearless, it's, you could say fearless, like there's nothing to hide. And it becomes purified. Then meditation, samadhi, it's called samadhi, on the basis of shila or discipline, then samadhi is achieved. If you don't have good discipline, then your meditation is not going to mature. If you have good discipline, which again relies on heedfulness, mindfulness, and introspection, then meditation just emerges. It naturally arises, and your mind becomes very pliable. And the Dharma becomes integrated. And then wisdom arises. And that wisdom flourishes to Buddhahood, like that. So anyway, this is all, because this fourth and fifth chapters is about the paramita of discipline. Previously, Shantideva taught generosity here. That's what previous second chapter. Now it's about discipline, the second paramita. And this fourth and fifth chapters, carefulness or heedfulness and introspection, are his teachings of discipline. And again, Shantideva was a master of the whole, all the teachings of Buddhism, of Buddha, particularly the sutra teachings, but he was a master of all teachings, and he consolidated them and essentialized them into these 10 chapters or 9 chapters. And so he's presenting here what's important when in this carefulness, heedfulness, mindfulness triad of practices. And that's how you will be able to maintain discipline. He's not giving all the rules and regulations so much. What he's presenting here is how to actually keep them in a correct way, and not making rules that we will feel imprisoned by. Or that we're in a straitjacket, I'm not supposed to do this, not supposed to do that, have to do this, have to do that. Like, he's not teaching in that way. He's teaching about the mind and how the mind should be carrying out the paramita of discipline, which is to be cultivating heedfulness, mindfulness, and introspection. It's like a prisoner, like just keeping vows and going through the exhaustion of vows and rejecting vows and giving up your ordination and all this, or just finally you've had it up to here with all this Buddhist stuff and you just want to break out, It's just like a prison or a straitjacket. In a prison, you can't do stuff that you want to do. You can't, first thing you lose is your freedom of movement. And that's hard. And you don't get your choice of food. You can't eat this. You just take what's given. And I mean, it's like you're in a prison, but there's nothing there about giving up of a criminal mind. The same thing taking and encumbering yourself with all sorts of vows and things without, and our mind can still be corrupted. You know, it's very easy to swindle or to well, not swindle, to mislead your friends into thinking you're a very well-heeled, not well-heeled, a very good Buddhist just by your conduct. They can't see your mind. So that's why the emphasis that he's making here is this, is the inner, who really is holding the vows? That person, that mind. Okay, so I've really spent time on introducing this, but this is what the training is. When we talk about undergoing the, I'll follow the precepts step by step, then that means really training in this. And even though, as to repeat, we need to know certain things to do and not to do, but the real training is, once we learn those, then the training is not making that a parody or a show, but really training in how we're doing with it all. Because even in the teachings of the discipline as a paramita, many of the teachings of the discipline and paramita really, it sounds like any other teachings of, you know, there's three trainings of the paramita of discipline: giving up negative actions, practicing virtuous actions, and engaging in actions to benefit others. But the difference is in the emphasis is on the mind that's doing it. Okay. There are 20, now not to contradict, there are 20, actually 18 what are called root downfalls, plus the 2 that relate to the discipline of the bodhicitta of aspiration and the bodhicitta of engaging. There's those two aspects of bodhicitta, the aspiration or wishing bodhicitta and engaging bodhicitta or practicing bodhicitta. And so those 2 have certain vows, and then there's 18 root downfalls. And I'm going to suggest to you, advise to you, actually, words of my perfect teacher, Paltra Rinpoche, he doesn't go into the explanation of the root downfalls of bodhicitta. He talks about how to practice it. I don't think then in the guide towards my perfect teacher, I don't think that these specific lists are there. But certainly those are invaluable guides to carrying out the practices associated with relative bodhicitta. And then there's some touching on it in Jigme Lingpa's Treasury of Precious Qualities. But the best or the most specific text is the text in English is called the gaining certainty in the three levels, the three vows, or being certain of the three vows. What is it in English? What is it in English? Do you remember? No, that's not Tibetan. That's Tibetan. I know that. Oh, perfect conduct. I knew it was, yeah, perfect conduct. It's called Perfect Conduct. And it's by Ngari Panchen. And there is it's a commentary by Dujum Rinpoche. It's translated into English as Perfect Conduct. It was printed, or it was published, 10 years ago or so. So it might not be one of the headliners that have the, the really seductive titles, and the subject matter is dense, but it's a reference book. It's like it's an encyclopedia of the vows, and you can learn what the vows are there, and also remedies. So at least you should expose yourself and learn something about these 18 root downfalls, because once you take the vow of bodhicitta, then you're responsible for not breaking those vows. Hello. So, the big problem, and it was referred to in some of those scarier verses in the previous chapters, the big problem is that when we abandon bodhicitta, which is the root vow, that is the breaking of the root vow, is to abandon any being. And of course, this has to do with mentally talking to yourself in such a way that you tell yourself that that's one person I will not benefit. I will not lead that person to enlightenment. They do not deserve to be brought to a state of blissful enlightenment and liberation from suffering. That is the breaking of the precepts of bodhicitta. That's one of the aspiration vows, downfalls. Let's go. I said there's the aspiration downfalls and engaging downfalls, and then 18 root downfalls. But it really comes down to this one of abandoning sentient beings, any being. But these 18 are broken down into those actions that possibly are more likely or to be performed by a king, by a minister, and by ordinary people. That's how the 18 vows are broken down. But they apply to everyone. It's just king have power. The more power you have, then you can break your bodhisattva vow in certain ways. And ministers, if you took a bodhisattva vow and you happen to be like working in the Defense Department, or you're the minister, like a minister vow or something, or you're like a chief of police or something with a bodhisattva vow, then you can't do certain things, or you're likely to do certain things that would be abandoning or rejecting your vows. So these 18 vows are arranged, and then the vows of ordinary people. But there are a couple of things that are important. Again, like this, mentally to abandon a sentient being, any sentient being for any reason, to separate a sentient being and not be willing to lead them to awakening if you have the opportunity, then that's a root downfall of the bodhicitta precepts. aspiration bodhicitta also is the second one is to make someone regret virtue. To regret a virtuous act that they committed. Like, oh, you shouldn't have given money, or you shouldn't have done this, you shouldn't have done that nice thing. You know, that's your breaking that's a downfall for your aspiration bodhicitta. And also, if someone has benefited you, to do things that make them angry at you, to cause someone to become angry who benefits you and helps you intentionally. And also the downfall of pushing somebody else down to make you up, to make you seem up. You know, that one, I'm sure you know that. You know, disparaging somebody so that you up. So these are 4 associated with aspiration bodhicitta. Then engaging bodhicitta is something like just simply praising yourself and disparaging others in general. That's a downfall of engaging bodhicitta. And also not giving, if you have the capacity to give, to refuse to give. Like you have lots of time, but you refuse to give time. You have material things that someone asks you for, and you refuse. Or someone asks you dharma. Of course, this is always a tricky one. You know, part of generosity. One act of generosity is the generosity of dharma. But then also, there's a lot of strictures. There's a lot of discussion about that, maybe some other time, but yeah. Then there's also not regretting and purifying a bad relationship you have with someone else. Kind of just being willing to have a bad relationship with someone, not resolving it. And then there's the, when you do teaching Dharma or sharing Dharma that to you seems like Dharma, but to the other person it's not. Or it's just something that appears and sounds like Dharma, but because of our inability to know how others' minds are, it doesn't benefit. It's just pearls before swine, sort of. I don't know. Is that politically correct anymore? I was thinking about that the other day. Anyway, it's either misleading or teaching what you think of as Dharma, but it's just something that appears to be Dharma, or something you dreamed up that seems like Dharma but isn't really. Anyway, this kind of a thing. So these are, you can look into these in this book. Also, there's the Jamgon Kongtrul's. There's one volume called Buddhist Ethics. And Kongtrul, I'm making for those on the radio, I'm making a gesture of about 1.5 inches thick book. But it's an expansion of Dujia Rinpoche's commentary to the 3 vows that I mentioned earlier, called Perfect Conduct. But it's very exhaustive. But of course, there's also many books on Buddhist ethics from the Theravada tradition and so forth. But those don't relate to bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is unique to the path of the bodhisattva, to the Mahayana. And to be considered, like it talks about children of the, what is it, children of the victorious ones, heir to the victorious ones, like to be a bodhisattva means to be, we've talked about this earlier, to be the offspring of the Buddha, to heir, the next in line to the Buddha. That kind of a person, a bodhisattva, is someone who has certain characteristics. One characteristic that the bodhisattva has is that they have actually taken the vow of bodhicitta from a lineage preceptor, a lineage holding preceptor. And that having taken that vow, that they have a conviction that that vow has arisen. And that confidence in having received that vow is a major aspect of a bodhisattva. It's not someone who practices, loving kindness and compassion. It's really this twofold focus. A bodhisattva has a twofold focus, just to make distinctions. This is nothing about disparagement. These are all the teachings of Buddha. But if you're going to talk about this one's a bodhisattva and that one's a bodhisattva, it's someone who has that bodhisattva lineage by having received a vow from a genuine lineage, and has conviction that that bodhicitta has arisen in their mind, and that they direct this is what's called a twofold focus, that they focus with compassion on benefiting sentient beings, on beneficial actions for the sake of sentient beings, and they focus with wisdom on perfect Buddhahood, perfect enlightenment. This is twofold. That's called a bodhisattva. Okay? Otherwise, like for Buddhists, they're, of course, practicing the four immeasurables or the four Brahma Viharas of love, compassion, joy, and equanimity is fundamental. But that's not the bodhisattva. I said, let's be clear. This is what the scriptures of the bodhisattva are defining, what it is to be a bodhisattva. And so, and then just someone who's has a lot of love and compassion and beneficial activity from that, driven by that compassion in a worldly way without those bodhisattva qualities. That's called samsara compassion. Even animals, all these many YouTube things of, hippopotamuses being kind to turtles and lions and lambs laying down together, all these extraordinary things. They're not just bodhisattvas hanging out together necessarily. I mean, we don't know. I don't know, but that's just the way that's just the sentient beings have as their nature compassion and wisdom. And through interdependence and the completely infinite complexity of cause and effect and interdependence, certain things occur at certain times when certain circumstances come together. So that's all I'll say on that one. Okay, so we'll pick up the second verse here next time. But please, we'll try and get the videos from the last two teachings that finished chapter 3. It's really important to take notes and to really know how to read these verses. And if you read, I don't remember how long it takes, maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes to read these first 3 chapters, or sometimes you can just read the 2nd and 3rd chapter. Actually, it's the 2nd and 3rd chapter that makes up like rituals that are carried out in our tradition in monasteries and so forth. But to recite those verses, especially during this time that we're studying this, to recite these and to remember them and try to use what you've been studying in your everyday experience. Okay, I don't want to get too far ahead, but we are kind of finished with the first 3 chapters. I'm not I'm not a scholar, and there is a scholarly, there's a lot of scholarship in studying. I mean, a lot of emphasis on study on the path of study, reflection, and meditation. There's a lot of emphasis and institutions set up and so forth on the study side. And I don't have that kind of background or interest particularly. But it's good to learn, but then also apply and practice at the same time. If you go to like a Ch4 and these things, there's so much detail, so much material that you come out of that and you haven't ever practiced it. And this is not just my own, I have no experience, but that's what the complaint is. You know? There's so much, and there's so much momentum and so much intensity in memorizing and learning all these details, 3s, 4s, 12s, 8s of these, that even when you come out, there's so much pent up energy of that you almost have to teach. And some people, if they don't teach after they learn all this stuff, they get sick, have nervous problems and things like that. So you need to teach, you know? And so this thing, it keeps going. But if there's no practice, I don't think that it'll stand a chance in Western society. But we can't just practice without also making effort to study. But then combining what you study and localizing, not localizing, but just study what you are practicing. You know, don't be random. There's too many books out there. So just really focus on reading things that support what you're actually practicing from a meditation, reflection point of view. And so right now we're training in Bodhichitta. We should be reflecting constantly on the freedoms and advantages of this human body, and we should be more and more aware of the science or the occurrence of the kleshas, our mental afflictions. These 3 topics. Anything about them? Go for it. All right. So with that, we will dedicate the merit